Welcome to another podcast from Carrot Scale. My name is Greg Reiners, and I have the tremendous pleasure of welcoming my guest today, who is Leslie Inlow, and she is the owner of and founder of Cracked Open Therapy. And in this episode, we have the opportunity to walk through Leslie's story. And I couldn't be more excited to have others experience what I've had the tremendous opportunity to facilitate through her, but more importantly, to live personally through the story that she's told me. And I hope today that we can do that. So, welcome, Leslie.
Thank you so much, Greg. It's an
Well,
honor to be here.
well, I hope it's one of many that we get to have. But as we kind of talked about, I think one of the biggest parts about understanding where stories start is the foundational piece of knowing the person that you're listening to. And in your case, not only is Cracked Open Therapy a story of you personally, and also the name of your practice that you're helping others every day in, the story goes way back to when you were much younger, almost as a teenager coming through high school and into college, and where that progression of time and education has really started the foundational blocks of your story. So if you would please kind of start with where it all began.
Where it all began. Yeah. Well, what comes to mind is like why I became a therapist in the first place. And I used to think I became a therapist because I wanted to help people, which is true and is still true today. But as I've developed and now as I look back, I can see that I was seeking something for me to understand myself and my life. I had a father who was very into substances and wasn't very present. And so that deeply impacted me and my mom. And she got sober when I was 12 or 13. That really, changed our lives. Alcohol was a part of my childhood up until that point. And then I started to experiment. So my mom got sober, and at the same time, I started to use substances and found some solace there, or there was something there for me at the time. And so I continued to do that as I was growing and found a love for psychology. It was one of the classes in high school that resonated. Most of them didn't, but that one I was like, I ate it up. I was like, more, more, more. And art was also very important to me, which is important to me now. And when I was in college, I studied psychology and kind of had my own awakening and epiphany around substances and didn't like the way that I was living and decided to get help. I could keep going, but that is where that is where it all began.
It seems so much that when people go through situations in their life, that it almost always rolls back to something that had previously happened and a root of a lifetime of experiences. And it sounds as though that will be the beginning piece of the story for you as well. So as you moved on through college, what was the next part?
Yeah, so the only place that I knew to go for help with substance use was treatment in AA because that's what my mom went through, and so that's what I did. And I went to Fairbanks, which is a local hospital in Indianapolis. It's been there for a long time, treating people, and I was clean and sober in the recovery 12-step community for 9 years. And when I got treatment, the counselors there had such an impact on me. And I had had therapy before that, but I felt called to the field and did it. I became an addictions counselor and worked at Fairbanks for a couple of years and married a man in that same community, and we had a child. And I also was studying trauma. So I was alongside going to 12-step meetings and very, devout and involved in that system. At the same time that I was learning about trauma and studying EMDR. Do you know what EMDR is?
Please tell the acronyms.
Okay. Eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing.
Okay, thank you.
It's an evidence-based trauma therapy. So I was studying that and I started to feel this tension and this cognitive dissonance between my lived experience and then what I was learning. And what I did with that, I guess what happened with that cognitive dissonance is I cracked open. So I had this heart opening, mind opening, melting sort of experience of, oh my God, I don't believe in this anymore. This being addiction, treatment, AA, everything that I had built my entire life on, it was cracking open and crumbling. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know that I don't believe this anymore, but I have no idea where to go next. So that was really scary. And it led to a divorce, which is tragic. It's never what anyone imagines will happen when they get married. And at the time, my practice, so I had started a private practice. It was called Inlow Counseling. And then I cracked open and changed the name, cracked open therapy, and now here we
I always like to talk about the full circle of
are.
how your walk through not only the beginning part of your life, but the middle, and then obviously when you have others that it's impacting. And cracked open, just by the nature of physically cracking something open, there was a significant release by you of an awakening. As we look at where the next phase of this goes to, which really is your practice and how cracked open therapy is doing things differently than some of the other professions that are in your community, I have felt through our conversations that cracked open is something that everyone can relate to, because at some point you will, not if, but it's just a matter of when you will be cracked open. And
True.
if you could kind of explain how at those, because it wasn't just one moment, at those moments, the recognition of what truly being cracked meant to what is moved into how you're doing your practice, but specifically how it really formulated everything that you now do in therapy.
Yeah. What comes to mind is one of my dear friends. I was on the phone with her, and I'm actually writing a book about this.
But you
And
are.
yeah, I didn't tell you that. I
No.
am. And I write about this in the book. So I was
Okay.
remembering that. And where I was sitting in my car and I could still hear her voice coming through the like speaker phone in the car. And I was in a very vulnerable place. It was probably the first month that I had separated from my ex-husband now and was just needing a friend. And she said, everyone has one or two life experiences that crack them open. And I was like, oh my God, that's what's happening. That describes what I'm experiencing. It's like a shattering. Because if you imagine, a bowl, there's a Japanese art, it's called kintsugi. And imagine a ceramic bowl and then you drop it on the floor and how quickly that happens. I mean, it kind
Does.
of felt like it happened in an instant. And then the art is putting that bowl back together using gold. And so that image really represents my experience, which is like after that shattering. Like there have been just these little moments of just rebuilding and moments of light, where people like that friend giving me that phrase, and she's still a dear friend. And it's been like 4 or 5 years since that happened. And yeah, it's just like another thing that comes to mind is I love the author or the artist Pink. Do you know the artist, the musical
You.
artist?
Yes.
She's kind of like my spirit animal. And she has a song and there's a lyric. It says, let the walls crack. It lets the light in. It's also,
Well, I love the symbolism of taking pieces and not only just glue, but the fact that you're using gold, which is so precious, right? And what it takes to move gold in order to place it in
mm,
when you're putting it back together. That is all an art. That is all very precise, and it's not translucent because you're able to see what is shining and is beautiful within gold, right? Like it's an element that jumps at you. So the process of going through that whole just symbolism of what you're talking about is the example of how when you're cracked open, you walk through this walk, and it's just not just a matter of, well, we just push it together and away you go.
mm,
It
you're
is
right. You're right.
symbolic of the process required. You just mentioned that 4 to 5 years later, and we're still talking about this, and that's probably why it's an ancient art for the Japanese, because this is what they understand as a process and certainly what it takes
Yeah,
to
what like the art represents the human experience. So,
does. It does. And that human experience has really rolled into how your traditional training through college and previously now has walked it into how your therapy is practiced by you independently. And we'll get into the group in a minute, but how you have found ways to connect with when clients come in and the conversations you have. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
yeah. Mm, like, how do I make this concise? So, a couple of years ago, I started working with a coach for the first time. Up until that point, I had started or I had done therapy and tons of it, lots of different therapists over the years. And it happened organically. But I was like, yeah, sure. Like this seems like a different realm for me to grow and continue to develop. And there was somatic work involved, energetic work, even the spiritual world is a part of what I experienced in that coaching, which has always been a part of me, but I didn't feel like I had permission to bring it into the room. So that's one of the things that I think my clinical training, there were kind of restrictions or barriers. And then I started to explore kind of art in the therapy room, using the body, talking, using symbolism, using even animals, like just bringing in the elements, and just this more like holistic, well-rounded view of my clients started to happen instead of just seeing them in their mind and like how I was to treat their mental illness. I started to just see them as a whole person who's having a human experience, and the body is so important in that. And I think that is probably the biggest shift that I've made is incorporating somatic and body work into the process, because I don't really believe anymore that people are problems to be fixed or treated, that what they're bringing into the room is actually a very valid and normal human response given what they have experienced in their lives, and it's my job to guide them and walk alongside them as opposed to kind of being the expert and being above them. I kind of feel like my clients and I are just sort of right next to each other. I might just be a little bit further along the path.
Well, and talk to that a little bit, because I think one of the differentiators in what you do as a practice compared to more traditional steps, as they would say, is exactly why I think it's very attractive for people to come and find treatment there. Because what you just described is another alternative to what is currently being used. And as no two people are the same, also no two treatments are the same. And so, how have people been receiving what you did years ago, and now how you almost have that more intimate connection to what is happening?
Yeah, one client comes to mind who I saw years ago for a period of time. And then during my cracking open, we were not seeing each other. And then she recently returned to me. And she always said, "You helped me so much." Like the work that we did 5, 6 years ago was really impactful. But now she's saying there's something different happening. Like I feel like what we're doing is really moving me forward toward where I want to be. Whereas in the past, even though it was really helpful, I still kind of felt stuck.
And you and I spoke about how much quicker, in some cases, not all, but when therapy is being discussed and how situations are being discussed, you've recognized things progressing, because I don't think quicker is the right word, things progressing at a different rate than what they would have previously.
Yeah, I mean, as a client in the coaching experience, I transformed quicker. I think that word fits, like, at a faster rate. I think I just wanna be really careful about saying therapy is bad. It's like, I don't want that to be the message at all because I still really love it and honor it, and I believe that all the therapy I had leading up until the point where I started working with a coach prepared me to be ready for that work. So I think there's a
Well, I you
place
should
for all of it.
that's so important, because
Yeah.
there's multiple phases of it.
Yes. Yes.
So you can't just identify, well, this is right, this is wrong, this is right. No, it's phases. of how the progression happens. And you yourself have lived through those phases. And let's just go back to putting the pottery together. Like it will go in phases from the base up to the bowl and up to completion, right? Like there's different parts of how that happens to build that foundation back up. And where you might need that traditional piece to build the foundation, there's an opportunity that once that foundation is built, that almost as though this coaching scenario comes into play, where especially if you have lived experience like alcohol abuse and some of these other things you spoke to and were around, you all of a sudden, the individual that you're working with also can recognize that.
Yes, yes. And I'm really glad you brought up the alcohol piece because I wanted to speak to that for a moment, if I may. So I noticed it was interesting because I was also having this paradigm shift around addiction work. And so when I realized I didn't believe in the 12 steps and I wasn't going to be a part of that community, that impacted my clients a lot because a lot of my clients had come to me because of that connection that we had. And so my clients who were wanting 12-step work started to kind of fall away. And then now I've been attracting and working with clients with alcohol problems mostly, mostly men. So this is kind of a niche that I really feel a lot of passion for, working with men and not only with substance use issues, but what I've been doing with these clients is more of it's a different lens. So instead of seeing the problem as a disease or a condition in the body and the person that needs to be managed for a lifetime, we see it as what alcohol actually is, which is a substance, an inert substance. It doesn't have power. You put it in your body, it has an impact on your body, but that's it. And it's how we relate to the substance that matters. So I've been taking them through a process of exploring and repairing their relationship to alcohol, which has not led to, in every case, complete abstinence either, but just a different relationship that makes it a little easier to kind of moderate
Yeah.
their alcohol use.
And one of the other things that's unique about what you're doing is the collective of your colleagues, and that is different than what you came from as well. And I only reference the past because you have to go through the past to get to the future. So
Yes. I'm here for that.
as you're sitting in your practice and you have your colleagues there, you've created an ecosystem that is supporting not just your clients, but their clients as well. And I think that's very different. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. What I noticed about how I was well, hold on. I really kinda just wanna tell you the story about how I saw this vision.
Yeah,
Can I do
please.
that?
Yeah.
So, I owned a therapy building. I'm gonna make this as short as possible. So, I own a building in Noblesville, Indiana. That's where we practice. And we had these neighbors next door. And when I was cracking open and I couldn't attend to the property the way I used to, they were like these angels. I mean, they would call me and be like, "Hey, this light is still on," or like, "Hey, do you need anything?" I mean, they were just I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. They were like angels. And then I find out that they've been living in this home for 20 years and they're being evicted. And I was like devastated for them, just feeling with them, and then found out that they found somewhere to live. Like I was just walking by them and chatted, and I was like, oh, thank God, I'm so glad you found somewhere to go. And then, like an hour later, I'm leaving my office, and it's like it just came through me like a lightning bolt. This vision of a collective where we're not operating independently, like one therapist, one client in a room, kind of cycling through all day. But it's actually like two or three buildings right next to each other. And we're all kind of, I think about us like bees and pollinating and maybe there's more than one clinician on a case, and maybe we co-therapy lead cases and that we actually can't do this alone and neither can therapists. Therapists can't do it alone either. We need support and help. So it was this vision of this whole ecosystem working together in a brand new way, kind of like a beehive. And so that's what we're building, and it's really cool.
Well, your beehive is buzzing well because you have a number of colleagues that have their own unique talents that are associated with what's happening. And I found one of the significant parts of that group thought where you're talking about the ecosystem is this word called trust. And you're providing a environment for trust that is different than what others have as just a one-to-one. There's actually one plus. Talk a little bit about that trust that you've witnessed and how the clients are receiving it.
Yeah. I mean, we had an open house on last Thursday, and it really came to life the embodiment of the trust that we've built together because we meet as a group every week and we collaborate and talk about ways to help our clients. But we also talk about our passions, and we're each kind of doing our own creative thing. There's magic in it. I can't explain it, but when I was in that room with all of us, you could feel the trust and the how each person kind of is their own individual and is allowed to express that, but then also is a part of the whole picture. And clients are responding by feeling they can't really explain it either. Like they walk in and they're like, "I don't know what it is, but I just can breathe. I feel safe. I feel held."
And that part of it is the uniqueness and what's special as anyone who's been cracked open is trying to be healed. And I feel as though that scenario, that safe havens that is being fostered by you and your colleagues allows for a different segment of how those pieces are put back together. Every day could be driven by a one-on-one scenario where they need, the therapy, but that's not every day, which is the uniqueness of going back to the analogy of putting the pottery back together. Some days you need someone to hold it for you, and you can't do it by yourself.
That's right. Yeah. And
And
everybody needs something different at different times. So, yeah, exactly.
so at some point, the other wonderful part about this is the podcast Carrot Scale and caring for others and how that all happens is that the philosophy is that you and your colleagues are able to see how that healing happens. And you feed off of that growth, that success for the individual, the success for the moving of people from their different seasons of where they're walking through. And it doesn't happen quickly.
Mhm. The cracking happens quickly. The gold art happens over
Yes.
time, gradually.
And I believe that it's just so beautiful how those opportunities for people to come and have you and your colleagues provide that to them allows for a different healing and the cracks to be repaired. And it's wonderful to see. It's one of the reasons why I want to do this podcast with you because I haven't heard it through others in the same way. And one of the first times when we spoke, it was incredibly authentic to me how it just hit so quickly. And my goal through this time with you is that I believe there's many out there that are seeking the same thing that traditional, and I say traditional, just you're walking in a medical building
I
of,
think, yeah, traditional is how I talk about it too. Yeah,
yeah.
traditional.
And, and now there's just other ways to walk through those different seasons that can also heal the need for those cracks that have happened at other times. So it's beautiful and it's wonderful, and I'm just so
Yeah, thank
fortunate to have you explain how all of that happening, and then will
you. Yeah.
continue to go, and certainly days and weeks and months ahead. And at this point, I would ask you if there's anything you'd like to talk specifically about, like what your practice does and how it works, or just your website or anything like that that you want to mention.
Yeah, I wanna mention too that we run it a little bit differently in that we have an administrative assistant. Her name's Stephanie, she's amazing. She does all of our calls. You get a free consult call with her. That's the first step, and you can book that on our website really easily. But what's amazing about Stephanie is she is sort of the opening the door to the garden path. So, as we said, not everybody needs the same thing. So, there's multiple pathways for you to follow. And she is your guide. And then once you're placed with a a therapist. We will come up with a plan for you that fits your needs right now. And then we start to incorporate sort of like additions to the foundational therapy piece. So that might be a group, that might be an intensive, that might be equine therapy, it might be art, it might be yoga, could be so many things. So we are, yeah, just open, ready to receive anyone that is called to us.
And I know they will find you through your website and certainly find you through other ways that I'm glad that they have the opportunity to do that. Well,
Thank
with
you so
that, I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to learning more about some of the pieces we talked to, but certainly with the type of therapy and some other examples of how we can do some more of this podcasting thing and some more episodes to learn and more importantly to help educate others that might be have the opportunity to come in and be have their cracks healed at cracked open therapy. So thank you, Leslie.
Thank you, Greg.
We'll do it again someday soon.
I would love that.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.